So my name was Marianne Schmoller. Not Miriam, but Marianne is my name. But they call me Miriam here.
So Miriam, it's a great honor and a privilege to be with you today. And Miriam, if you could tell us a little bit about you. I know you were born in Berlin. When were you born?
1921. So I'm 101 or going on 102.
It's wonderful. Sure, you look so much younger, Miriam. You look amazing.
I don't know how I look. That's what's true. In May 21, I was born.
In Berlin?
In Berlin.
And can you tell us a little bit about your parents, where they came from?
My parents didn't live very well together and divorced when I was 3. So I stayed with my mother in my youth. Saw my father from time to time, but not present in the house. And so I felt a little bit lost between. And my family looked at me. I was looking much like my father. So she is the daughter of that one who left his wife. So they looked at me askance. Yeah, you are going okay. And you are coming back in time? Yes. I hope so. Sorry, you have to cut that out.
Hold on.
It's okay. Now
okay.
She's going. She just goes out to buy something. And then came Hitler and told me, you may not be complete in your family, but you also don't belong here. So I was lost between not really a family, no country, and I was quite a searching child, an unhappy child maybe, not unhappy but insecure. But somebody helped me and said there are youth movements will prepare you for another country where you are welcome, and we will teach you what you need. So I joined youth movement Maccabi Hatzair at the age of 11 when Hitler came to power. And they helped me later to get out of Germany via the youth movement. The Chalutz arranged for young people to be prepared for their life in Palestine. They rented some farmhouses or farms near the big cities and taught young Jewish children between 14 and 18 a little bit of agriculture with the thought they might one day go to be in a kibbutz. And I joined Maccabi Hatzair, and they really helped me. They said that don't worry that you don't belong here. You have another country where you are welcome. They taught me a little bit of Hebrew, very little, and talked about the country here, about the archaeology and the geography and whatever was to be known. The only thing they didn't tell me was that there were Arabs in the country. That was when I came here, I found out about the problem with Jews and Arabs living in this country together, but not together. And so that was a new revelation, but that was much later. So as a child, the Chalutz organized, as I said, farms out in Germany, but in 1939, it was already, the war was looming at the horizon, and they said it's too dangerous to be in Germany. We'll arrange for you where you can learn agriculture in another neighboring country. So they organized for me to come to Sweden. The Swedes didn't like the Jews very much, but they had need of people who would help in agriculture because they're just building up an army, and many men were taken to the army, so they needed helping hands. So I became one of the volunteers who came to Sweden and was put up with a farmer family to learn what I learned there. It didn't help me very much in Israel, but the Swedes said, we take 300 or 400. I've heard different explanations. Young people under the condition that they come for 1 year and that they only work in agriculture. So I came under this condition to Sweden on the 19th of July 1939, 6 weeks before the war broke out.
Miriam, can I just ask you, growing up in Berlin, did you go to a public school?
I started my school year in a Catholic neighboring school. We moved to another area in Berlin, and then I went to a public German Protestant school, and only in 1935 did my mother arrange for me to go to a Jewish school. So I went through the Catholic, the Jewish, the Protestant, and the Jewish school.
And did your mother ever remarry?
Yeah, after I had left Germany. So at the beginning of the war. But she was lucky because this man whom she married had a brother in the United States, and he arranged for both of them, for my mother and her husband, to come to USA. So they came there. They got the visa to the United States in spring 1940, already in the war, but they didn't know how to get there, because to get out of Germany over the Atlantic to come to the United States was very difficult. They tried all kinds of ways, but always I got a little postcard written, no, we tried this, we tried that, it didn't work. And then one day, somewhere in beginning of the summer 1940, I got a postcard or a letter. Hooray, we are in Moscow. Wow. Moscow. How did you get to Moscow? Turned out, which I heard later, that the Joint in America provided 1 or 2 airplanes to take some Jews out of Germany. And my mother and her husband were lucky enough to be one of these planes. So they didn't fly over the Atlantic. They took them to Moscow. Why, I don't know. And then from there, the brother in America provided the money, and they took the week-long train through all of Asia to, not to Vladivostok, but somewhere down there. And from there, they went by ship from Japan, from Japan to over the Pacific Ocean via Honolulu in Hawaii to San Francisco, and from there they went to St. Louis, where they lived for the next 30 years. That's what she did. He died a few years later, and she lived in St. Louis, and in the end she was alone there and not so young anymore and not so healthy anymore, so I provided for her to come here, and she lived the last years of her life in a very nice old age home in Kwashmayahu, and is buried there.
Wow. And Miriam, can I just ask you, you were growing up with the rise of Hitler, the rise of the Nazi Party. Do you remember the Nazi youth, and do you remember?
Very vividly.
Were you scared to walk on the streets?
If I did what?
Were you scared to walk on the streets?
I was not afraid to walk on the streets. I was not afraid, but I hated when they came marching, which they did, the Hitler Jugend, and we had to stand there with our arms up. So I tried to flee into houses, if there was a house with an open door in the neighborhood. But if there wasn't, I had to stand like everybody else. They did this very strange thing when I was in the German school, when I was 13, 14, something like that. In the morning, the headmaster of the school would assemble all the children and give us a small speech about what's going to be in the week, and then we had to stand up with our arms up. But the Jewish children in the group were not allowed to sing the anthems, but we had to stand like that. That I remember. I remember a lot of things, but...
Did you have a lot of Jewish friends, or was it German friends as well?
I don't know. Most of the friends were really Jewish, the Jewish kids in the class. It was a neighborhood with Jews, So we were 6 or 7 Jewish kids in the class, and we were mainly in this group. In school, in the beginning, until 35, the first 2 years of Hitler, I remember that we were still allowed to be the first year. In 33, 34, they told us already we had to give back the needle, that I was member of the gym group and swimming or whatever it was. We were no longer allowed, but we could still take part in the school, of activities. But the extracurricular things were already no longer open to us. I wanted to be in the choir, was not allowed to do this, and so, and then in 35 it became so unpleasant that my family decided to move me to a Jewish school, but not a religious one, a reformed one. So there wasn't much of Jewishness in the Jewish school. And I didn't get much religion at all, not this and not that. I have my own ideas about what I believe, but not formed by a formal religion. And that is it.
And your father, did he?
I met my father in the beginning more regularly and later less, but he took me, at least gave me tried to give me a little bit of education, took me to the zoo and to the planetarium and aquarium. He took me some places, and he was a very charming man. And I had a dilemma that my mother talked about him very ugly, because he had left her, and she couldn't understand why. Nowadays I can understand at least a little bit why he did it, but they separated, and he was not such a terrible man. But she taught me that he is a terrible man, and I felt attracted to him. So I had the doubt about myself, whether I'm attracted to a bad man, maybe I'm also a bad person. That was a problem in my childhood. But he was not a terrible man. They couldn't live together for all kinds of reasons, doesn't matter what. But he let us live in his very nice neighborhood where he lived with her when they married, and we stayed there for another many years. He paid for the rent, probably, I don't know. So he can't have been so bad. But anyhow, she talked of him in very ugly words.
And did he remarry?
She remarried after I had left Germany.
Your father?
My father remarried, yeah. He married, and he had a little daughter, 4 years younger than I am. And they moved together to South America, and they lived in the beginning in Chile, but I don't know exactly when and why. He moved to Buenos Aires, where he had a brother. And I never met my father's family, but in 1965, when I was 39 or something, they invited me over, so I was the first time in Buenos Aires in 1965. From then on, I was there 3 more times, so I was 4 times altogether in Buenos Aires, and going there every time a different travel route, once through Chile and Bolivia and through Rio de Janeiro. So I saw a lot of South America by way of visiting the family in Buenos Aires. And that's it. And I still, of course, they're all dead, but I'm still in contact with cousins or children of cousins in Buenos Aires.
And your half sister, is she still alive?
What?
Your sister, your
a half sister.
Yeah.
She was in Chile all the years, and she died 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
And you were in touch with her?
Yeah, she was here twice to visit.
Wow. And Miriam, wow, what a story! It's incredible. But Miriam, do you remember Kristallnacht?
Of course.
Can you relate to us what you recall?
It was then said that the Nazis come to the houses and take people to the camp, but only men. As my mother and myself, we were 2 women, and so we didn't feel the danger that they would come and take us. So the men of the family, my uncles, the men of my mother's sisters, and one more, 3 or 4 men stayed with us during this night, in the fear of when they are at home, they might be taken, but they came to us. So I remember that we provided them with blankets or whatever we had, mattresses on the floor, because we had not so many beds for all of them. And that I was feeling very important, sitting at the entrance door with a blanket around me and waiting for the Nazis to come, who never came, luckily. I was 17 years old, felt very important, which I was not. That I remember. I don't remember. We lived in a suburb where there were no big shops, so I don't remember houses being burned or synagogues or shops. This was not where we lived. It was just a residential quarter. So I just heard it from the radio or saw it in the newspaper. But we had that night, I remember, with the family members on the floor in the house.
You lived through the history. Do you remember the Olympic Games?
The what?
The Olympic Games?
The Olympic, of course I do. We lived next to the stadium. At the 2 roads who crossed like that, Reichstraße, which was in one street, and the other one was Olympic Street, and led straight to the stadium. And my girlfriend and myself from school, we came on bicycles, and once a week we made a tour around the building area where they built the stadium to see what has been developed during the last week. So I saw it growing up, the Olympic Stadium. And not only that, they made a proclamation in Germany that they don't have enough hotel rooms in Berlin for the many expected Olympic guests, people who would come during the Olympics. So, of course, not for Jews. Yeah, they would pay with foreign currency, with United money or something. So somehow my mother got permission. We had 2 guests from London, 2 teachers from London as Olympic guests, and they had a passport with all the tickets to all the performances, and one of them, once in a while, 2 or 3 times, didn't want to go, so I went to the stadium. I think I was the only Jew who went into the stadium during the Olympic Games on his ticket. He didn't go, so he gave it to his friend. So I was there. Of course, not only that, I can tell you a nice story. Before the Olympic Games, I was once in our neighborhood with white shorts and with a bicycle, went into a shop to buy something for my mother, and there were 2 gentlemen standing there looking at me, came out together with me and asked me to call them. I said, why should I call you? It's not what you think. We are looking for young people to be, we are preparing the film by Leni Riefenstahl about the Olympic Games, and we wondered whether you want to be in the crowd of young people. I said, I'm sorry, you are mistaken, I'm Jewish. Why did you say that? It's not written on the blackboard, on the screen. So I did not become a film star in the Olympic Games, but that I remember very well, of course. I have a good memory.
And do you remember what you saw in the Olympic Games?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember what you saw? Was it running or?
I saw was once in the swimming area, and I didn't see Jesse Owens or one of the big ones, no. I don't remember what, something, light athletics, running. That didn't impress me so much. More the building, which I had seen coming up, to see it from the inside when it was ready.
And Miriam, did you ever see Hitler or any of the...
Yeah, I did.
You did?
Yeah. I was once in the street where he and Mussolini moved in an open car, standing up in the car.
Wow. And what was your impression?
What was my... I don't know. I knew what it was and who he was. I was curious to see them, but it didn't frighten me. Not more than being at home. I knew who they were and what they did to us. But seeing them was I don't remember. Not any deep impression, apparently. Just curiosity.
And did you have German friends?
Not so many.
And in the building where you lived and in the area, the neighborhood?
In the building, we had lived in quite a large, then completely newly built area. The houses were just a year or two when we moved in. A small flat of 3 rooms, and we had a nice neighbor family, a couple. Good Butnan was their name, and with them we were in contact.
Were they Jewish?
No. No. But I don't remember very much. I remember we didn't yet have a radio, but we were with this family when Hitler came to power. And I remember that we sat there. I was 11 years old, and they said that, do you know German?
I can understand from Yiddish. I don't know.
That Hitler came ans Ruder, and Ruder is what you do in a rowing boat. So in my imagination, I saw him like rowing, but which he was not. But that I remember. But I didn't yet understand. Nobody understood what this meant, that he came to power, what would happen. That came later.
And did you ever have any anti-Semitic incidents with you?
I always prided my way of living the Hitler time was by pronouncing that I'm Jewish wherever I went.
You would pronounce?
And I always expected people to shout at me or hit me. Nothing happened. There was a paper in German, Jüdische Rundschau. Do you know this paper? It was a month or daily, not weekly, I think. And it had a large board, Jüdische Rundschau. And I sat in the underground and kept it open to see reaction of people. Nothing happened. I told everybody, like I said, the guys who wanted to get me into this film, and I told them, the first thing I told them, I'm Jewish. And it flabbergasted them that I wouldn't hide, but just made me proud of it. Nothing happened, ever, ever, ever. I did all kinds of things like that. Once I was walking in the street in Berlin, and a guy tried to approach me, no, little one, can we go and have a coffee together? I said, don't go, don't you go with me, I'm Jewish. And he said, what's that in English? We are used to, I don't know, I can't translate it, doesn't matter.
And in German? How does it go in German?
Ausrede. Ausrede is something that you say which is not true, but just to get away from it.
Wow. And Miriam, did you ever see any of the Nazi youth or any of the soldiers, any of the Nazi...
marching in the street?
Not only marching, but did you ever see them assaulting any other Jews or anyone?
No. I saw them marching in the street and singing. We all had to stand with our arms up, but that's the way I saw Hitler and Mussolini when I was in town in one of the main streets. But I never saw any, nothing.
And after Kristallnacht, when you went outside, after Kristallnacht, did you see any of the shops that were destroyed? Or?
No, I didn't get into the center of town. That was only in the center of town.
Center.
No, I didn't see it personally. I saw it in the paper.
Could you ever have believed that the Germans would have voted Hitler in and what would have happened? When you were growing up, did you ever think such a thing was possible?
I didn't think in that direction. I lived from day to day. I didn't make any plans for later future when I was a kid.
I know.
And kids don't do that.
And Miriam, what about your uncles and aunts and grandparents?
They all got out of Germany. all remained alive. Only I met a young man who was responsible for one of the Hachshara kibbutzim near Berlin, and we fell in love, and he is the only one who was taken. I moved to Sweden and he was moved to Holland, and in Holland the Germans occupied in 1940, and he tried to get away from there and he was caught, and he is the only one who ended up in Auschwitz. All my family and friends, they're all somehow spread out over Europe, or not only Europe, to South America, to Australia, and only he was taken, the only one, the one that I loved.
Wow.
That was it.
And your family, was it a Zionistic family?
No.
Or?
My family was very little, and they were all immersed in their life in Berlin, very far away from religion, wanted to be like everybody else. And I didn't get any Jewish education, not Christian either, no religious.
Did your family ever keep Pesach or any of the holidays?
Pesach, I remember at least once, one of my uncles invited family members whom I didn't know, and that I remember, one Leil Seder in Berlin, but that was, I think, the only one. But apart from that, nothing. We had a Christmas tree, and we were like everybody else.
And Yom Kippur, it wasn't...
Nothing.
And you, wow.
Nothing. My mother didn't go to shul, and neither did I.
And your father, was he more traditional?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. I was not there, never in his home. But no, I never saw. None of them ever had a kippah. They were just assimilated.
And did you have to wear the yellow
No,
star?
that was after I left. That was in 42. I left in 1939. So not at my time.
And Miriam, when it was decided that you would go to Sweden, did your mother ask you if you want to go, or did
No,
you?
she said she didn't want me to go. She was. I was alone. I would go alone. I would be alone. I didn't know the language. I didn't know anything. So she didn't want me to go, and I said I have to go to get. And I left her alone. She was the last one to stay in Berlin after I left, and I felt terrible to leave her alone. Again, I felt maybe I'm a bad person, that I'm not staying with my mother instead of going and saving myself. But I saved myself. And she was saved by this man who met her and married her and took her to the United States. So it was solved the problem. But I couldn't know that.
And how did you go to Sweden?
That's a nice story. We had to declare everything we took with us at the time, and they made up I had to got forms, and I had to say I take with me a dress which I bought in 1930 something, and I paid so and so much, and we had to repay almost the whole sum once again. Everything I took with me I had to buy like a second time. I don't know whether you've heard that. So, and then came a man from the customs, and on the day before I left, I had to pack my little suitcase which I took with me, and he signed for everything, okay, and then he closed the suitcase, and that was when I was allowed to take this with me, and the same with my handbag, which also was being checked and closed. And my mother on the train station, I went by train to the northern Germany island. From there was a ship that took me to Sweden. And I went by train first a few hours, and she gave me a coin and said, if you are hungry, go to the dining room and you can eat something. And I still had this coin when we came to the border. I had not gone anywhere, didn't eat. I was too excited. And when when we got to the last station, and not far from where the ship was, I was told to go to one room, and there I had to undress, and they checked every seam and even x-rayed my shoes to see whether I've hidden something in my soles or some whatever. So in the end there was a young man who checked my handbag and again said okay. And he said, "Do you still have something?" I said, "Yes, I still have this coin of 5 mark. Give it to me." So I gave him the 5 mark. And then I had to stand in line, and there was a little hut where you get a stamp in your passport that you are leaving Germany, and from there you were out. And before I got to this place, this man came up with 2 books and said, "I took your 5 mark and bought you two books here in the bookstore in the station. I want you to know that not everybody agrees to what is happening here." And this man, without knowing it, opened my way later on that I could speak to Germans and be in contact with Germans. I did a lot of trying German Israel contacts, and because of this man, he somehow opened the door for me when he said, "Not everybody agrees to what is happening here," and that's an important sentence in my life.
Because you realized that there were some good people as well. There were.
Yeah. Exactly. And he was the last German I met before I went on the Swedish ship.
And do you remember the books that he bought?
I know, well, I don't have them anymore. They were not important. What he found there in that little railway station, not very important. One was about animals and what, not important. This is not important. Important was that he bought them.
And can I ask, when you said goodbye to your mother, was it emotional when you said goodbye to your mother? Was it difficult?
It was very emotional.
Yeah, it must have been very difficult.
It was. I remember her standing there waving when I looked out of the window. It was terrible.
And your father, did you manage to say goodbye to your father as well?
I met him. He was still in Germany, but he left a week after me, I think. But he went to South America via France. They went to France and from there to, I don't know how he did it, but he did. Everybody left except this one man whom I loved. Man, boy, whatever you call it.
And Miriam, the group that you went, the Zionistic group that you went, were you very close? Did you have close friends in that group?
Yes, reasonably.
Did it make it easier for you to leave knowing that you weren't alone, that you had...
I was alone when I left. Nobody went to Sweden. I was the only one going to Sweden.
You were the only one that went?
Yeah.
I thought you went with the whole group. You were the only one.
I was alone. I was alone.
That's very... And how old were you when you went?
18.
So that's not an easy thing to do.
Well, it was a way to stay alive.
And can I ask, what happened when you got to Sweden? Who came to fetch you? And
yeah, there was the Stadtrot had, or the Herr Chalutz, had an organization in Sweden. The Swedes were, as I said, were prepared to take some young people, and there was an office in a little town called Hässleholm, and they knew that I was coming, and they came to the railway station. I met a nice lady on the ship, or in the car, in the train. She took me and gave me a meal on the ship, and then she was taken by a car by her family, and they took me to Malmö, to a bigger city.
To Malmö?
Malmö. And there I met this representative of the Herr Chalutz, and he took me to where I was going in South Sweden. There was a Jewish children's home, and the first weeks I stayed there, but I didn't like it because I wanted to learn agriculture. My idea was Zionism. I wanted to go to Palestine and learn agriculture, but they took me there to clean up in the children's home, and that was not my idea. So I asked them to arrange for me to come to farmers. So a little later I went and moved to farmers, and from then on I stayed for the next 2 years and a half with different farmers in a group of about 25 young Jewish people distributed at different farmers in the area. And we met once a week or once in 2 weeks in the central little town. And that was my personal contact. But during the week I was with the family, with the farmers. And the first was a young couple who had just married and they needed help. And it was difficult. I was the first up in the morning feeding the chicken and milking the cows, and in the evening the last to clean up the washing, the kitchen chores. But afterwards I think it did me a lot of good. I learned to work without complaining, because there was nobody whom I could complain to. And what it was more important, and taught me love of nature. Because in Berlin I didn't get much contact with nature. Stone buildings around me, but there I was suddenly in a field. We had to work hard, and in the short summers to work on the land and get in the crops before the frost set in again. So we were living very intensively, and everything was done by hand, milking and driving, whatever. So I'm grateful for this time. It opened up roads, ideas of me, and that's it.
How did you learn Swedish? Did you learn?
How did I learn Swedish? On the toilet. Really, it's no fun. They had a newspaper, and they cut it up into rectangles and put it on a nail in that little cab, and next to, not in the building but outside. And I went evenings, at least in summer when it was still light, and tried to read something. And the first thing that I could understand, they cut out whatever it did. First thing I understood were obituaries, when it was written, my father, mother, who died, it will be on one day of the week. So I learned Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and so slowly I tried to understand whatever I could read. And then I took my bicycle and went down to the central little town, and they had a library, and I tried to lend books, but they had only the classics, which of course I couldn't understand. But anyhow, I took them home and tried to kept them for a week or two, tried to understand. And after the time, Swedish became my second language. I married in Sweden, also a refugee man, and we spoke Swedish. My little daughter, the first language she heard was Swedish. We came to a kibbutz here, and we didn't want the neighbors to understand everything, so we spoke Swedish among ourselves. That's it. I still have books in Swedish here.
How long did you stay in Sweden?
10 years.
And that's where you met your husband?
That's where I met my husband. Not a Jew. A refugee from the Nazis, politically. His father was a famous politician against the Nazis. He had to flee Germany before all the Jews. He became later prime minister in East Germany for a short time. So it was a famous, well-known anti-Nazi family, but he was not Jewish.
What was the name?
Seidewitz. Max Seidewitz was his father's name. He was a well-known politician.
And he was in the government in East Germany?
Yeah.
Wow. Did you ever go to East Germany?
Yeah, of course I did. Let me just see. 4:45. Okay, I still have time. Okay.
And it was a happy marriage? You were...
we loved one another until he died much too young. But we dissolved our marriage because he wanted to stay in it. We went to a kibbutz, and he loved the kibbutz life. He came from East Germany, so that fitted him. But I didn't feel good there. I wanted to decide myself where I live and what I did, and so we dissolved our marriage. But he became my family in Israel. He was in the kibbutz, buried again, and had more children. And my own daughter came with me, and we went there for summer holidays, and he came to visit here to see his daughter. So he was like my brother.
It's amazing. And which kibbutz did you go to?
Kibbutz Chaim, next to Hadera. And he is buried there, and so is my daughter, and so I will be. I bought a plot there next to them.
And did you ever get remarried?
Yeah, I did. I did a geographer. I was at the Department of Geography drawing maps, and he was a lecturer there. And we married, and we were married for 40 years.
Wow.
But he died also. Everybody died. I'm alone. I'm left alone of all the people whom I know.
And did you have more children?
He had more children, yeah. I didn't. No, not my first husband had children. In our marriage, no, there was no children.
And you kept in touch with your...
Yeah, very much so.
That's very unusual, isn't it?
I know, but it was lovely. Good for my daughter. She had two homes. One was me and one there. In holidays, on her vacations, she went to the kibbutz. She felt at home both here and there. And I went there a lot.
And Miriam, did you often go back to Germany?
Yeah, later. Because of this man with the 5 mark, I became here they founded something called the German Israel Society. And I became the head of it in Berlin, in Jerusalem. And we invited Germans who came to Israel, who wanted to learn, want to try to understand why all this had happened, why the hatred, what's the reason, who are Jews, and we were open to talk to them. Already 1960, even before they started the diplomatic relations with Germans, and we became an address where many Germans who came to Jerusalem wanted to spend an evening, ask questions, get answers. And in that connection, they invited me many times to Germany to give some speech at a meeting or in a restaurant, or where they invited friends or organizations. So I went a lot. And today I have more acquaintances in Germany than here, because all my friends here are dead. And then in Germany, they are also old by now, but they're still alive. So I have some friends in Germany. Here I have all of our German-speaking friends are dead.
And Miriam, can I ask, why do you think it happened? Why did...
Well, that's a big question.
It's a very big question, I know.
Why it happened, it's a long story, but I don't want to go into this. It's too much now, because I have to go down soon to a meeting. So I think I've told you what I can tell you.
So I just wanted to... And Miriam, I just have to ask you, what message do you give? What message do you give?
Don't hate.
Yeah.
Don't hate. No violence. Life without violence is worth living. No hatred. Hatred is blind.
It's so true. It's and you know, that person, that good German, the last person that you saw before you left, so he had a profound impact on your life.
That is true. He couldn't know that, but he had. That's true.
Well, Miriam, I just want to thank you.
You're welcome.
Just bring this in. So, if I can just, Miriam,
A photo.
Yeah,
Okay.
Miriam, I'm just so grateful to you. Really, you are amazing. You are an inspiration to all of us.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate it so much. And you should just be well and please God.
So where will this go?
I'll show you. It can go. I think everybody should see it because
Move
Miriam,
everybody.
anyway, anyone can see. Because Miriam, I'll just mention, you are so positive, and look, you went through so much, and you're smiling, and you don't have bitterness. You look at life very positive. It's such a good message for all of us, and not to
but
hate.
where are you going to take it? Whom are you going to show it?
With your permission, we can show it to everyone. Everyone should see it.
Okay.
I think it's your message is so important, especially for today, where you have
New anti-Semitism.
Not only anti-Semitism, but people should live together and respect each other and respect the differences and appreciate the differences.
True. Okay.
So thank you so much, Miriam. You should just be well and healthy, and I'm extremely grateful to you.
With pleasure.
Thank you. And you should just, you know what they say, may stream in very good health and happiness and...
Thank you.